Well, it's match week 6 of the championship season this weekend, and finally, after a slow start, myself and my club Luton Town are back in form. More on that in a moment, but for now, we're going to look ahead to this weekend's action, preview and predict the score for all 12 matches, and as always, I'll encourage you to do exactly the same down in the comment section below. Give us your score predictions for all the weekend's action, and if you beat or match my overall score, you'll get a shout out in next week's recap when we look ahead to match week 7, which annoyingly begins with Luton at Plymouth on Friday night. But for now, before we go and look ahead to all the match week 6 fixtures, we've got to have a little recap of what happened last weekend, where finally I've picked up some form and made it into double figures. As you can see, I picked up 11 points this weekend, and you know what delivered. We said there's not been many of them this year, but their championship's favourite scoreline is back. 2 of them for me, one a very late show for Sheffield Wednesday v QPR, another for Watford Coventry, and correct outcomes for Sheffield United, which we watched here on Friday, Oxford, Blackburn, Swansea and West Brom, secured me 11 points overall. But how did you guys get on in comparison? Well, I'm into the top 3 this week. I'm joint 3rd place with David B, who also got 2 championships favourite scorelines for Borough and Sheffield Wednesday. 11 points for you as well. Great effort. Just above us in 2nd place on 12 is Chris Welch, who got the Sheffield United score perfect, as well as Borough and Watford's 1-1 draws. But running away and blitzing the field, top of the tree on 16 points is this guy. 4 perfect scores for you. Sheffield United, crucially Luton Town will take that one. Borough and West Bromwich Albion. 4 perfect scores, 16 points overall. By far the star of the match day, so well done to you. But let's move on with all of that out the way to match week 6 and see if I can get myself near the top of the tree again. We start on Friday night with the game that we will be here doing a live watch along of, just as we did last weekend. And yet again, we're going to be watching Hull City. This time they travel to Stoke City, and both of them have had a pretty difficult week, haven't they? We start with Stoke City, who are managerless now, having sacked Steven Schumacher after just 5 games of the season, despite the fact they're on 6 points and have started okay. I know the performances haven't been great in the defeats, but they looked like towards the end of last season they were starting to build something. They had a manager who could have unlocked the exciting young players, and to expect them to hit form after 5 games does seem a little bit odd, but this is Stoke City. They sack managers in August pretty much every year. They did manage to get through in the Carabao Cup in a week in one of the lowest standard penalty shootouts you'll see. But this is going to be a tough ask for them. Whether they'll have a manager in place in time or not, I don't know. It was suggested a deal was close. I'm recording this on Wednesday morning. At the moment, there's no new manager in. They're coming up against a Hull City side who we watched against Sheffield United here last Friday. And I think most of us were in agreement. They weren't particularly great, were they? They haven't had the best start on paper. I know they yet to win a game. They're in that relegation zone. Definitely not been as free-flowing as we expected from a Tim Walter side. 3 games without a goal now. And defensively, they're giving the ball away in their own half so much, which is always going to be a problem for sides at this level because you get punished more. And unfortunately, that has happened to them. When you consider the last 2 games were against sides who most would have in the top 6, I don't think it's quite as concerning. But this game is one that they've really got to target. They've had frustrations against the likes of Plymouth and Millwall and Bristol City already this year. And against the Stoke City side that may well have a new manager bounce, it could be a pretty tricky evening. I don't really know what to predict for this game, but Stoke are a bit hard to call in this situation as we don't know what their managerial situation will be at kickoff. But I've really been disappointed with Hull so far this year. Stoke have picked up a couple of decent results. So I'm going to go for Stoke City to win, and I'm going to go by 2-0, another Hull City defeat. As we move on to Saturday, and we start with 3 early kickoffs, and the first of which is the Battle of the Yellows. It is Norwich City versus Watford. Watford's brilliant start just starting to dwindle slightly. A 1-0 defeat to Sheffield United, followed by a 1-1 draw against Coventry, but both sides who are going to be up in that mix for the top 6, so maybe not the worst results. And actually, the Coventry-Watford game, I don't know if any of you saw it. Brilliant match. Loads of great chances in it. Both sides showed plenty of attacking intent, and it was just a really entertaining game. So, got to give credit to Tom Cleverley. He's made Watford a far better side to watch, and so far, they've picked up better results as well. And I don't think in the end, either of those will be a disaster. For Norwich City, the slow start continues. They backed up that 1-0 win away at Coventry with a defeat at Swansea City. We mentioned it in the Coventry game. They're not going to play like that away from home that often and win. And actually, they probably played a bit better in the Swansea game than they did against Coventry, but didn't get the points this time. Didn't create a huge amount, but probably you could have argued a draw would have been a fair result. The early own goal put paid to them, though, and it has become a frustrating start for them. Yet to pick up a win at home, draws against Sheffield United and Blackburn. Watford drew the last one, but before that, they look quite good in front of goal. They are creating chances, and Norwich defensively haven't been the best at times this year. So I don't know where to go here. I think you all know what I'm going to edge towards. I was thinking about going for 2 goals apiece, but I'm not going to. We've got to play safe after what helped us last weekend. The Championship's favourite scoreline delivered then. I'm going to throw them in a lot this weekend. 1-1 I'm going for at Carrow Road. As we move on to a London derby between Queen's Park Rangers and Millwall, another of the early kickoffs between two sides coming into this one with a defeat. QPR was in the Carabao Cup against Premier League opposition, so a little bit different for them. A late draw against Sheffield Wednesday, the ultimate goalmouth scramble, the type of goal we all love as football fans. But after conceding in the 93rd minute, genuinely a good effort to get back on terms there, and continues their league unbeaten run, obviously. Since the opening day, they haven't lost. Albeit a few too many draws in there and no clean sheets, I think they'll be happy overall with their efforts. For Millwall, a disappointing defeat against Luton, a couple of great chances in the last 10 minutes, but prior to that didn't offer a huge amount. They may argue that Ted and Mengi should have been sent off late in the first half, and even as a Luton fan, I wouldn't really disagree too much, but they did give up a few good chances. They could have been 2 or 3 down. In the end, it was a bit of a bizarre game. Not the sort of chances that we expected both teams to create. Almost played out the opposite as we expected. But Millwall disappointing again. And that lack of goal threat. We thought in the first couple of games it was a bit weird that they were in thrillers. But 3 of the last 4 they haven't scored in now, including the Carabao Cup. That does start to suggest the problems that we were hinting towards in pre-season. So this well could be a low-scoring game. I thought about going 1-0, but I wanted to have a bit of ambition this weekend. So I'm going to go for Millwall to win it because I think they will create chances against QPR. Both of these sides have the same Achilles heel, which is taking their chances. I'm just going to back Millwall to do it on a hunch. 1-1 would have been another good prediction, but I've gone for it so many times this weekend. I felt like I had to go for a winner in this one. So I'm going to go for Millwall by 2-1. As we move from London to the northeast for the final early kickoff, it is Sunderland versus Middlesbrough, which the fans continue to reliably inform us isn't a derby. You should try telling Sky Sports that in their promos. Sunderland shocked with their first defeat of the season at Plymouth, a 93rd minute one for the home side. But it's just what we come to expect, isn't it? A young side that are inconsistent, the perfect start, everyone's talking about promotion. Just a really disappointing day. It was an even game. A draw probably would have been a fair result, but it wasn't a great Sunderland performance. It didn't have the intensity of some of the other games, and maybe could you argue a little bit of complacency? That's probably a hard accusation to make. But they come up now against a Middlesbrough side who struggled to score goals, and that does bode pretty well for Sunderland because Middlesbrough create chances against Preston. Again, absolutely dominated the game, had enough chances to win 3 or 4. And it was the same on the opening day against Swansea, wasn't it? Had hatful of chances, only scored 1. And it's becoming an Achilles heel for Borough. Good that Tommy Conway got a goal, but again, not consistent enough in front of goal. And that maybe gives Sunderland the edge in this game. If it had been prior to last weekend, I probably would have gone a comfortable Sunderland win. They've looked to goal threat at home most of the year. I'm going to sit on the fence in this one. Part of me thinks it's going to be quite a cagey game. I do think Borough are going to set up a bit more cautiously, and maybe hitting on the counter will give them better chances, I don't know. I'm going to go for an entertaining game, but still a Championship's favourite scoreline. 1 apiece at the Stadium of Light. On to the 3 p.m. kickoffs, and we get to Bristol City, who will be delighted to return to home comforts against Oxford United. 2 3-0 away defeats in succession against Blackburn and Derby. And everyone was talking in the comments about the optimistic Bristol City start. And I told you, the inconsistency is always going to be there. This is Bristol City. Like it or not, whoever the manager is, whoever the players are, this is just how Bristol City operate. There's a little bit of optimism, and then it falls away. Okay, the Blackburn game, it wasn't a reflective scoreline. Blackburn had 3 shots on target. It was a fairly even match, but Bristol City defensively have always had the same problems, and they've been exposed yet again in the last 2 games. And again, the amount of second half goals they concede throughout the 4 years we've been doing this is frightening. So again, they're going to continue to be involved in even games and lose away from home. But against Oxford, this is a game they've probably got to win, because for all Oxford United have started fantastically, 3 wins out of 5, they've done what they needed to. Away from home, it's a very different story. They lost in the cup, they lost against Coventry and Blackburn, and they've conceded a fair few goals on the road. At home, they've been brilliant, tactically wonderful, and that home form may well keep them up this year. But on the road, they are a side that most teams should be looking to beat. They're yet to pick up a point away from home in the Championship, and Bristol City, conversely, decent draw against Coventry and that comeback victory against Millwall at home. Their home form is the better of the two. So based on that, I know a lot of people might go for a bit of a surprise after the last 2 weeks. Could see a few going for another Championship's favourite scoreline, but I'm going to go for Bristol City to nick it, purely on the home v away form, by 2-1 at Ashton Gate. On to a game that I think a lot will have down as a home banker at Turf Moor. It is Burnley versus Portsmouth. Pompey, we mentioned, coming towards the end of that rotten 7-game start. You can't judge them on these results. The performance is perhaps a slight concern, particularly at home, but overall, they've had a horrible run of fixtures, and they've done okay to get 3 points out of it. For Burnley, a wonderful result at Leeds, a brilliant goal from Koleosho, who, for me, is possibly the best player in the Championship going forward. However, let's be completely fair with it here. If Leeds had a centre-forward who could put the ball in the net, they would have lost this game. They haven't looked convincing, even in the games they've won, in terms of creating chances. It has been a problem for them this year. I know there was a big thing at the start because they scored 9 in their first 2 games, but their expected goals is poor. They don't create many golden chances. And while on the counter, they're always going to offer a big threat, they're not going to be offered many counter-attacking opportunities by Pompey, you wouldn't have thought. Pompey are going to sit back, try and hit on the counter themselves. We've seen it in a few games this year. But away from home, they've had a goal threat. They found it far easier on the road this season. This time, though, I think it's going to be a bit more difficult. They lost at the weekend convincingly, but West Brom were magnificent. Carlos Corberan's side always delivered the goods. No shot on target, though, for Pompey. They got to the stage where they were just trying to shoot from anywhere at times. So I think for this one, Burnley win comfortably. Not going to go for a mad scoreline, your 4s, 5s or anything like that. I'm just going to go for the safe 2-0. I think Burnley, comfortable win for this one. Into the second half, which begins in South Wales with Cardiff City versus Leeds United. Leeds, as we just mentioned, had a really frustrating day against Burnley. They've had it a couple of times this season now, where they've dominated games. The Pompey game, where they should have scored again late on. But that Burnley match, are they going to regret not getting a top centre forward in? Because the players they've got are not consistent enough in front of goal. And it means they're always going to throw in a result like this, which in a game where they were the better team is going to be all the more frustrating. But they've still got a good side. They played really well against Hull and Sheffield Wednesday. And against those sides outside the promotion race, most of the time they look good, particularly away from home. Cardiff, on the other hand, probably been the worst team in the division so far this year. They're bottom with the worst goal difference, the joint most conceded, the least scored, lost at Derby, lost at home to Borough. Didn't look like scoring for the most part. And I know against Derby, they had a couple of shots, but Derby had by far the best chances of the match. Cardiff are trying to turn into a possession-based team at times. They're keeping the ball, but they're not going to be able to break teams down. And I think this is going to be a tough season. It's kind of what I predicted last season for them under Errol Bulut. And that style, which wasn't the best to watch in Turkey at times for him, is what's sort of starting to be delivered now. So I wonder how much longer he's going to last. There's a little bit of pressure already. And this game is not going to make things any easier for me. I think Leeds on the road will open up spaces in their defence. I don't think Cardiff have got enough to create lots of chances. They might well nick a goal here or there, but I'm not going to go for it in this one. I'm going for Leeds by 2-0. Back into England for the next one, as it is Coventry City versus a travelling Welsh side in Swansea City. Now, Coventry are playing tonight as I'm recording this in the Carabao Cup, so they're the one side that I can't factor in their midweek result. But I can factor in their entertaining 1-1 draw at Watford, which, as I mentioned a bit earlier on, was just a brilliant game. Both sides created loads of chances and might be disappointed that they didn't score more, but in the end, I think you could argue a draw was probably a fair result. Really good to watch, though. Coventry are always up there. They lost narrowly to Norwich in that really frustrating game, and maybe taking chances is the issue again. But considering how slowly Coventry normally start, they're in mid-table at this point, which is better than normal. Swansea, 1-0 win against Norwich. Really good result for them. Yes, an early own goal. Yes, they didn't create a huge amount of chances themselves. It wasn't their best performance, and they didn't really control possession, which is the sort of thing they normally try to do. But again, a solid enough start for them. 7 points from 5. Okay, they've had a couple of games. You would expect them to pick up results, and the fixtures have fallen quite kindly, but these away games have not been pleasant to them. The defeat against West Brom, now a tough trip to Coventry. I think this is going to be a tight game. Both sides, their recent matches have been low scoring. Probably means we're going to get a thriller now, but I'm going to stick with a pattern. I'm going to go for Coventry to nick it. And I'm going to go for Swansea for the third time this season to lose on the road by 1-0. Let's move on then to the game that I'm going to be at on Saturday afternoon. It is Luton Town versus Sheffield Wednesday. Much like myself in the prediction show, Luton Town back in form with a 1-0 win at Millwall. Really good first half performance. Could have scored a couple in the end. Relied on a screamer from the centre half. You feel once the strikers get scoring, it could be a very exciting season. Victor Moses in and building fitness on the right. Alfie Doughty signing a new long-term contract on the left. And overall, the side starting to look a bit more settled. Did give up a couple of good chances late on and relied on Kaminsky to make a couple of brilliant saves. But before that last 10 minutes, weren't massively threatened, if we're being honest. Should have had a red card. I mentioned that. Second yellow for Mengi, but I'm not going to complain on this occasion. Sheffield Wednesday are winning the cup after the ultimate frustration of the weekend. Going ahead through a good Barry Bannon goal late on to then still throw away the points. And the defending of set pieces is becoming a bit of a problem for them. We mentioned it against Sunderland where they were just woeful at the back. This time in a goalmouth scramble, managed to give a second, third and fourth chance and bite of the cherry for QPR. And a game that in the end they should have won from going ahead in the 93rd minute. They somehow managed to drop points. So not been the most convincing start. They had a pretty poor away record last year. But they do like to hit on the counter. And the way Luton mark man for man, I feel they might open up space for them. So I'm going to predict Sheffield Wednesday to get a goal here. But surely one of the Luton strikers has got to score eventually. Both hit double figures in the Premier League last year. I'm sure it will come soon. I'm going to go for Luton Town to nick it by 2-1. I think this will be a tight game. Sheffield Wednesday will have a threat against us. 3 to go and we move on to one of the few remaining unbeaten teams. It is Sheffield United against Derby County. Much like Oxford, it's been a great start for Derby, another of the promoted sides. A 1-0 victory against Cardiff, a 3-0 victory against Bristol City. Two games that were probably pretty even, you've got to be fair here. There weren't a bundle of chances being created, but Derby are looking fairly solid defensively at home. And I mentioned this when we did the live stream, the opening game of the season. They look good against Blackburn, and it's only because they went gun-ho too early to try and chase the game. They saw Blackburn were there for the taking, that they offered up opportunities late on. And in fairness, if Blackburn hadn't still had Sammy Schmodix, then they probably would have got a result. Since then, they've been really good at home, really impressed with them. They've defended for their lives and they've fought hard. Away from home, though, against top sides might be a little bit more difficult. Sheffield United, we watched here in last Friday's live stream. They were excellent against Hull City. Yes, the opposition wasn't brilliant, but for the most part, they look very comfortable, look very threatening going forward. And you're starting to see some of those link-ups from players that have now only just played a few games together. Those combinations will only get stronger. 2 successive wins for them. 11 points if you take away the deduction. They're right up in the mix. Sheffield United, I'm pretty confident, will be in the top 6 as predicted this year. I'm going to go for them, probably to beat Derby here. I think away from home, it's a bit too much to ask. And for Derby and Oxford, and for Pompey later on, the home form is going to be absolutely crucial. I'm going to go for Sheffield United to win comfortably. I do think they'll give up a goal, because Derby on the break have had a threat at times this year. But defensively, I don't think they'll have enough to handle them. I'm going for Sheffield United to win by 3-1 at home to Derby. And the final game on Saturday is another of the unbeaten sides, the table toppers, West Bromwich Albion, who host Wayne Rooney's Plymouth Argyle. Sorry, I had to do it. They're Wayne Rooney's Plymouth Argyle now, aren't they? Media darlings again after a late 3-2 win against Sunderland. Do you know what? Probably didn't deserve to win the game. It was fairly even, but a much better effort. Showed attacking intent. They're still open as anything at the back, but that ain't going to change this year. And on paper, they've not got one of the best sides in the division, but they really did show an intent to score goals late on. I should mention, by the way, that penalty for Patrick Roberts was soft as anything, so they might feel hard done by to be behind anyway. But a really encouraging day for Plymouth to win, to get that first League one as well, and to move on to 5 points, which is a fairly solid start, especially when you consider that they've now played Sunderland, who are right up there. They've had a couple of tougher games as well. Sheffield Wednesday away from home is probably the only one where they've been well and truly battered. If we look at home for West Brom, though, It's the most formidable task in the Championship. There's not a much more difficult game than West Brom away from home. A brilliant performance against Pompey. I watched that game. They were fantastic. Alex Mowatt's first goal was lovely. Obviously the perfect start. And it was just a really brilliant day for them. Restricted Pompey to shots from distance, no shots on target. And backing up wins against Swansea and Stoke and that 0-0 against Leeds. Just been a really good start. And I know West Brom fans gave us a bit of stick for putting them in the top 6, saying they didn't have a goal scorer. I think Josh Madger might become the star of the season unexpectedly. I'm going for West Brom to win convincingly. I think Plymouth, after the first day at Sheffield Wednesday, might have a similar experience here. I know West Brom, it's normally 2-0 at home. I'm going to go for 3-0 for the second successive game. West Brom 3, Plymouth Argyle 0. And we finish on Sunday lunchtime with a Lancashire derby. It is Preston North End versus Blackburn Rovers. Preston back-to-back 1-1 draws this week. And will they recover from a ridiculously long penalty shootout? Went on for a while, didn't it? 16-15 against Fulham. Just madness. A 1-1 draw at Middlesbrough at the weekend. We mentioned it in the Borough section. They were battered. They were outplayed. They had so many chances against them. And if Borough had a good centre-forward or an informed centre-forward, it would have been 3 or 4-1, unfortunately for them. But they had one shot on target. They took it. They defended hard. They got a point. It's a good result for them in the end. Paul Heckingbottom, it's going to take him a little bit of time to get that side settled. But we're starting to see signs again that they're just not going to dominate games very often this season. For Blackburn, their home form has been remarkable this season. A really good win against Bristol City. Scored all their shots on target. And I mentioned it from that live stream on the opening day. I love the look of Ahashi. Looks a proper player, a real threat on the counter. And with Schmodik's gone, I think he's the man to step up to the plate. Maybe not quite the same number of goals, but certainly an incredible threat to most opposition defences. They've had a really decent start, haven't they? They're up in 3rd place. They are the other unbeaten side this season. And when you consider the doom and gloom at the start, they look like they're going to surprise a few this year. Away from home, they're not quite the same side. 2 draws, of course, and yet to win an away game. And this game's hard to call as a result of that because Preston won't offer as much room on the counter-attack. They'll defend quite deep. They're not going to just go and dominate the game because they're at home. Blackburn have got a threat on the counter, but can they open teams up? When we saw Derby sit deep for 60 minutes, they struggled with that a little bit. I think for Blackburn, the goal in this game is to come out and keep the unbeaten start if they can. For Preston, need to keep picking up points. So I'm going to sit on the fence for the final game. A Championship's favourite scoreline to finish. I know Preston at home normally do quite well in this fixture. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. John Eustace to continue a very good start. So with that out the way, let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for this weekend. And the story is 2 home teams scoring 3 goals, Sheffield United and West Bromwich Albion. I've gone for all 3 of the unbeaten teams to keep their unbeaten record. I've gone for managerless Stoke to win comfortably on Friday night. And I've gone for my team Luton Town to pick up their 2nd win of the season with a 2-1 victory at home to Sheffield Wednesday. Just 3 Championship's favourite scoreline predictions in the end. I had 5 when I started. But those are just my predictions for this weekend. Do you agree or disagree with them? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, give me your scores for this weekend's action. If you beat or match my overall score, 3 for a perfect score, 1 for a correct outcome, you will get a shout out in the next recap when we look ahead to match week 7 at the same time next week. For now though, if you did enjoy this one, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. Don't forget to turn that notification bell on, subscribe to the channel, and come and join us on Friday evening while we watch Stoke City versus Hull City. I hope you'll come and join me. There's also going to be more Championship predictions and soon a manager special from Stoke as well. But thank you very much for watching. Check out all the other playlists up in the eye above. And I'll see you guys back here again on Friday night as we watch the first game of the weekend here live together. See you there.